Tonight I am going to talk about and reveal some information that was revealed to me regarding African people that were born on this land in America and the European influence, and how they have raped the mind, the body, and the spirit of the African person. Some of the physicists, especially Einstein, he indicated that humans only utilize 30% of their brain power. 30%. I always wondered what were the qualities of the other 70% that were underutilized. Now, I understand in his research that he did not utilize African American people. So what he indicated in his research was that other races, such as Europeans, they use 30%. African American people at that time had gone through what I call on this land the Dark Ages for African American people. Because during slavery, there was no light of spirit coming in. There was no information and no knowledge. And when they came here from Africa, when they were stolen and tortured and came to this land to become a slave, they had no knowledge of the language. So the white man gave the African American a language that highlighted and raised his status. They told the slaves that a man of white color, his name was master. So if you didn't know the language, you thought that all white men were master, because that term was not a part of your knowledge and your language in Africa. So what they did at that moment, they tapped into the subconscious. And I'm hoping that tonight, and most of the people here know that we do have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. And in spirituality today, metaphysicians believe, and I believe, that the subconscious creates our reality. And this is how we manifest, through utilizing our subconscious mind. The conscious mind sets the stage for the subconscious to bring it up. We are more than we have ever been told that we are. One thing about African people, we were a very unique people and original people and rooted in this planet. When the Creator, whoever you call God, the Creator placed individuals across the planet on different lands, he put the Vietnamese people on their land. He put the Indian people on their land, the Chinese people or the Asian people on their land. And there are certain foods and the cultures they vary from place to place. Now, those who understand metaphysics and physics somewhat understand that gold runs through this planet. And gold balances this planet. And if all the gold was extracted off this planet Earth would just collapse. Now, we look at the fact that the Creator put the African people on a land where gold runs profusely through Africa, more than any place else on the planet. Now, we also understand that the sun is very important to the human kingdom, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the fish. Without the sun, there is no life on this planet at all. We cannot live without the sun. Why did the Creator put the African on a land where the sun shines the brightest? We look at different crystals and stones. They're very important. And some people who are involved, they understand that crystals, they emanate an energy field. And they can be utilized for a number of things, for the mind, body, and the soul. So we look at the fact that crystals and diamonds and emeralds and rubies and the most beautiful stones and special stones, they grow profusely in Africa. I have been fortunate and privileged to see some books from a master metaphysician, and some of you may know him, Dr. Delbert Blair. I studied with Dr. Delbert Blair. We had a special relationship, and I was allowed to go into a study that he has that was filled with books that had been censored, books that he had collected for many years, dealing with the mind-body-spirit connection, dealing with extraterrestrials, and many other things. Lots of information. The fact that the African American was so spiritual that the Europeans, when they came on that land, they were amazed and they were shocked because they had never seen the different feats that they could do. They were similar but more pronounced than the Magis over in India. You know, the Magis were known for doing all manners of things that were amazing to your average person. But the African people were different. They were draped in gold, and I've seen pictures and images and books. They were draped in gold, and they had gold all over. They had gold in their ears. They stretched their necks with gold. Gold was so important. And I learned later on that gold enhances the consciousness of a people. This is why even during slavery, African slaves would find a piece of gold and they would mold it and bend it and they'd work with it until it was fine enough to put in the infant's ear. They put it there for a reason. They didn't put it there to give a baby or an infant pain. They put it there to balance the consciousness of the baby. I noticed within the last 10, 15 years, all the gold has been extracted out of the African American community. It's a reason for that. Because gold enhances and balances the consciousness. And this is why we see so many unconscious people. But the government and the powers that be and the families that rule this planet, they have access to information and knowledge that the populace does not have. They have access to the best minds when it comes to spirituality, prophecy, and any aspect dealing with the human. So they can pretty much predict what's going to happen on the planet. There has been certain prophecies that have occurred through ancient cultures and some old prophets, and it has proven to be true. There are even African prophets that have been taken advantage of, and people have utilized to get their message out, but they use it as their own message. So there are prophecies that have proven to be true over time, and they know it, so they can plan ahead of us. And in planning ahead of us, they can put stop signs, they can put detours, they can put stumbling blocks. There's information, as I said earlier, regarding the cosmic universe. The sun affects humans. Everyone knows that. Without the sun, there is no life. So if the sun affects us, gives us vitamin D, and provides a life force that it radiates outward and radiates into our bodies, so does the moon. The moon affects our emotional self. We have an emotional body. Our emotional body is affected by the moon and the different phases of the moon. Even law enforcement has studied this, and they know that under a full moon, there are more crimes of passion. And that's recorded and documented. So if the full moon affects the tides and women's menstruals and affects our emotional being, that's an aspect of the human, then other heavenly bodies affect us also. But we're not aware because information has not been easy accessible in the African American community. Information is kept outside as other cultures are growing and utilizing different aspects of the mind and our mind, which I'm going to get into. We already understand how the African bodies were utilized and raped and tortured and beaten to build America through slavery. Everybody knows that. That's understood. And some understand how our spiritual self has been utilized and taken from us, negated, as if it never existed. We were very spiritual beings in Africa, our ancestors, and we had immense power. Immense power. We had a direct connection to the Creator. A direct connection, and we did some marvelous things. In the West, they talk about Jesus and the fact that he died and he rose up after 3 days. Well, that was happening in Africa. People were dying over there, and Africans were raising them up in 3 days. Mm-hmm. But no one told us that. So now all we did was focus on one individual. Mm-hmm. And we set that person, Jesus, who was a prophet and an ascended master. We focus on him. And we think that what he did was unusual, but our people were doing that way before. And if you go back into history and you study a little bit of Egyptology, you'll know that everything about Jesus was a copy from another Egyptian individual. I'm not here to teach a history lesson, but I'm here to talk about the faculty of the mind. We know how our spirituality has been snatched from us, and we were given a spirituality. And the intent was to place a white supreme image in our minds. So if you have a white supreme image in your mind, there's nothing ever higher than a white image. So no matter what you do, no matter what you think, white is the superiority. This was done intentionally to captivate the minds of the people. Now during the 1700s, there were individuals who studied mental science. Mental science was a study of the mind and how humans could utilize their mind to really create. There are so many mental scientists. They were all over. It was just profound from Europe. And I have a list of names, and a lot of them that I have read, because I grew up in the 60s, and I grew up in the Black Power movement. And I identified with that. Angela Davis was one of my major role models. When I was in school, high school especially, I never, ever had anyone to teach me anything about African Americans. And when I was fortunate and I got a set of encyclopedias when I was like in 7th or maybe 8th grade, I was so interested in the Negro, because that's what we were called then. And I would look up Negro, and I would look it up in the encyclopedia, and I'd read these encyclopedias. And anything I ever read was that the African Negro was a savage. A savage. This is the way we were portrayed to the world. And the Europeans, they perpetrated this because they got so wealthy off of slave trade, they were able to take those resources and that money, and they were able to go and trade with other countries. This is how, and they perpetrated, they talked about who we were. They negated us everywhere. There was no place where we were not negated. We were considered savages. Now I'm going to go back to the 1700s and these mental scientists, and the 1800s and the 1900s. They're just numerous, and they were prolific, and that's all that everybody was reading about. And this was before the Industrial Revolution. But they were all talking about this mind stuff and how the mind creates our reality. And if you think a thing, that thing becomes your reality. And how we could create. And so the men of that day They begin to read that, the businessmen. And this is how the Industrial Revolution was such a boom. They begin to create because they used the subconscious mind. They were taught. But those books have been watered down, censored, and they turned into what they call sort of New Age, but they were diluted. I was fortunate. I had access to some of those books when I was like 17, 18, 19 years old. And I like to read, and I read every day of my life. There's never a day I've not read. Every day. Every day I grow. Every day. I never read to be entertained. I never read a funny book. As a kid, I loved books, and I read very interesting things. I never read love stories. By the time I was 17, I was studying astrology. When I was 18, I was studying numerology. As older, I started reading more and more. And it's like when you seek a thing, the thing begins to seek you. There are aspects within this planetary system. The ethers, information flows. Before the telegram and the telephone, people would think, and they would send messages to their loved ones. They would send messages to their loved ones overseas and in war and just lovers, and they would get the message. People knew when a loved one was ill. They just knew it because that faculty, the intuition was there, and it was being utilized because they had no other way of communicating. So they communicated with their innate abilities. That has not been utilized anymore. People don't utilize that particular aspect. It's like a muscle. If you don't use it, you won't be able to. If you don't move your legs, you won't be able to. If you don't move your body, you won't be able to. We have to use these different faculties for them to be keen and available and powerful. So what happened, Europeans began to teach the African to look outside of himself for the power. But our African people always knew the power was in them. They didn't rely on anything outside of themselves. They had different deities, the Orishas and others, but they didn't look for power outside. They knew that all that power was inside of them. One thing I have to address, during slavery, and it's very difficult to find this information because when I was researching slavery, I found in order to get information, even through Google, I had to use the word Negro. That's the only way I could find information, and I had to say Negro slave. But I was very fortunate. Someone shared some information with me, and it was a book. And I also read this in other articles. The African slaves in the South, when they brought them over here, they were so powerful. And on many of those plantations in the South, the African people, of course we know, were being tortured. And babies were being torn from them. Their lovers, their husbands, their wives, their children, their mothers, their fathers were being separated. Tortured, babies were being cut out their mother's stomach. Other Africans would look at the slave master with such disdain, they were falling dead across the South. Because that inner spiritual power that they had, they didn't lose it. So with the emotion and the feeling that they had and the hatred, it caused them to create. The African slave, the white masters and the plantation owners were falling dead all across the South, or they were getting deathly sick. Negative things would happen. And so what they did, they put laws in place, slave codes and different other slave laws, that you could not look a white man in the eye. Many know that the eyes, or believe that the eyes are the seat of the soul. So if someone can tap into your soul, they tap into the essence of who you are. Those slaves would look the master in the eye, they'd fall dead. Some right on the spot. I was fortunate to see Harriet twice, and I went with some friends Sunday to see it again. And this time, my intention was, I want to see the spiritual thread running through it. That's all I want to see, because I missed some of it. The first frame of the movie that they showed was Harriet on her knees, and she was asking God to take her white master. She was praying very deeply. And the next frame, it was the funeral of the master. That told me something else. And that should have sent a message to every African American. Now, in life, there's always an opposite pole. There's two poles to everything. If you can use your mind power and the essence of your inner power, innate power, to kill, you can do the opposite. You can create, you can build up, you can make something very positive occur. And the Europeans and the white Americans knew this. Now, they had already tapped into our spiritual self. They had already used our bodies. That's who we are: mind, body, spirit. Our spiritual self, they were controlling. They were controlling our physical self. So how did they control our mental self? Our creative aspect. Humans only were known to use 30% of their mind power. The other 70%, the mental scientists say, and I've read an awful lot of them, and they were not an easy read because they were always saying that the African was a savage. I've not picked up one of those books that they didn't indicate. There's one who was well known all over Europe, and he came here and he laid his philosophy down, and it began, it just took on a wave, and it changed, and it's created a social status in America. He says that they were larger souls, and that the larger souls had to control the smaller souls and the savages. The savages were considered the African people. This is how they negated us. This is how they wrote about us. And this is the information that went all across the planet. Wherever their missionaries put foot, they put us down and they negated us to be savages or beasts or heathens. But it was negative. And Webster, of course, he defined the words and he defined us to us. This is why they used all of those negative images before the television. They put them on billboards, they used them everywhere, and they showed Africans like monkeys, less than a human. They wanted us to believe this is who we were, and they wanted whites to believe that is who we were. So now you got the white people using their mind, because the program is for them too. The program for white American, white Europeans was to keep in your mind that that African was nothing, less than human. Never could he be equal to the least white man. So now they're carrying that image in their mind, and it's becoming a reality. Because other people can think into your world and create. And this has been documented and proven. So now they're thinking that we're less, and they're making us believe that we're less, because we have no culture, we had no history that we could identify with. We didn't know who we were. And everything about us was negated. Our skin color, our melanin, everything about us. Our nose, our hips, our lips, our hair, everything. There was nothing good about a black person. Zero. Nothing. And that's what we were bombarded with. So when the television came, remember, television. We telling people a vision. You're giving them a vision. So they gave us a vision. And the vision was when you saw African people on television when I was a little girl, it was very negative. It was so negative. I mean, they would show the Africans, I mean, like they were in the jungle. They never showed the beautiful parts of Africa. There are some beautiful parts of Africa, but they never showed it. It was always deep in the jungle and acting as if a savage, and our image was distorted. And then they used blackface to make us even look worse. And it went on and on and on for generations until black people withdrew their life force into themselves, and they didn't feel whole because they didn't know who they were. But if you hear something over and over and over and over again and it's reinforced through your imagery, it becomes you. So then self-hatred comes in. Then we have to look at the fact that white men raped so many African people, so many African women. So now you have all of these Africans who were very dark skinned, now we all end up being light skinned. So now you have what I call a double or dual self-hatred. You hate your black blood running through your body, and then you hate the white blood that's running through your veins. It's a double self-hatred. This self-hatred has gone from one generation to another. And then we treated our children historically. Black children were beaten because that was the only thing that African people knew on this land for discipline, because they were beaten. But they weren't beating their children. So they began to use this television to show us, all black people and white people, who we were. It tapped into our subconscious. Because when you see something over and over and over again, it becomes your reality. So we don't feel as whole. But the opposite, when we looked at the televisions and they gave us a vision, we saw white people enjoying life. They were swimming, they were in their pools, their beautiful homes, their cars, their families. Everything was so nice, their vacations, and all we could do was long as we looked at that. And as we longed, our feelings came into play. Our feelings are part of that aspect of the 70% that helps create. So now we got this longing to do and be what the white folks are being and doing. They have everything, every channel, every appetite. They're eating the good foods that we don't have. We don't have these things in our homes, but we are longing. So now in our mind, we're seeing white people as the top. And our God is a white God, because some people couldn't even differentiate Jesus from God. So that's the highest in their mind. It's a white Jesus, and so there's never a black man that could ever equal a white man. So now we have the African women in these churches. They will negate their black mate over white Jesus. Their children over white Jesus. So now what they have done, they tapped into our subconscious. And when they started, and I'm going to say this, in the mother's womb, because it has been proven and demonstrated. I read about a lot of accounts of this, where women have, when they were carrying their babies, white women, they would listen to Mozart. They would listen to whatever it was they wanted their child to be, because they knew through osmosis that baby was receiving the knowledge. And the babies would come out and they could play, they could do, if their mothers listened to the violin every day and she read about the best violinist, the babies would come out playing the violin. Programming the children in the womb. Our children were not programmed like that because we didn't know. So our children were programmed with our own ancestral consciousness that flows in us. We're not very much. We can't get enough. We can't eat enough. There's never enough. We're not treated well. We don't know where we're going to get the money for the baby. The baby might be a burden. All of this. And that's what the baby comes out feeling. Just like we treated it. Just like through this osmosis. So now, when the baby does come out, the program is waiting on them. Infancy and toddlers. Now you got 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds. They have to have a dial. And the dial had to be white. So they use every age of development to program us to carry an image for them, to uphold white supremacy. And we've been holding it ever since. So now you got the little girls, they want a dial, they want a white dial. At least my generation did. We wanted a little white dial and we loved that white dial. And we hugged that white dial. And when we looked at that white dial, we knew we were not enough. Because that was not our image. So now you got the little children programmed. They subconscious. They done tapped into it, the program. Then you move on and you get the children in the next stage. You get the adolescents. Same thing. The little boys. They want to play with a fire truck, but the heroes are all white. They want to drive those fast cars. They want to play with those cars, but they all white. Everything is white and it's reinforced because you got a white Jesus. So now when the little boys that are adolescents and they playing with these different toys and items, all they see in their minds are the white males better than them. Self-hatred. I'm not good enough. But I hold up the white race because I'm holding the image that will create their reality, that they are better than us. We holding it. We creating for them and negating our own reality. That's why I'm talking about this. Spirit showed me this. We've been holding them up a long time. Then you look at the young men. Yes, these gangs, they're gangs all over, they're everywhere. And they start out because they've locked up so many of our black men. Then the black women carry, ain't no man out here. Sure isn't. We create them. We create. There are no black men. And if we say it enough, as a collective, it becomes our reality. So what we're doing is negating ourselves, and we're holding up the other race. And then you know black young men, they always get involved in gangs, because if you live in Chicago, if you know anything about gangs, you know that if you live in a certain area, if you're not involved in a gang, everybody gonna see you in that gang in that area. And they're gonna treat you like you in that particular gang. So now, even if you are a gang member, you don't have a father, you don't have an identity, this gives you hope, this gives you dream. They help you, they do this, they do a lot of things like a family. But then when they look at the white gangsters and the white gangs, they see them getting the pass. So even the gang members, they tap into their mind. Even the old gangsters today, they see a gangster in the White House that's white. They see him. And I know they be like, this gangster in the White House. But I'm a gangster and I had to do time. And I'm called this and I'm called that and I'm that. But these gangsters, they ruling. How is this? So in their mind, what you think, if they are not conscious beings and real conscientious, the program is running. So they holding up the whites because they got everything. They got the cars, they got the money, they got everything. And the African gangster, they going to jail. The white man has used our mind. We can go back. We can go back to liquor. Corn whiskey in the South. Corn whiskey. They locked them all up. If you made corn whiskey, then you were a criminal. and you went to jail. You did time. So African people are the ones who created that. So the government, they say, oh, they know how to make money. Let's tap into their creativity. Let's call it liquor and let's regulate it and let's us get paid, all the white folks. Same thing happened with policy. I didn't play policy, but I heard my parents, uncles, I heard my family talk about policy. They talked about playing them numbers. So what happened? You get caught playing the numbers, you go to jail. You have a numbers house, you're a criminal. You go to jail, and everybody, blacks was making money. They were happy. So what did the government do? They took over that and made the lottery. They said, oh, why black people making money? Let's take advantage of this because we've already taken advantage of all their inventions. We say that we did it because we had control of them, but we didn't create that. They created all these things, but we made them ours. Same thing with marijuana. We see this, you're living in it. How do you think those humans felt, the black people doing corn whiskey? What you think was going through their minds? Those that were in policy, when they saw that, what you think went through their minds? Same thing going through the minds of some African people today, African Americans, about this marijuana. Now all of a sudden, the white people won't have it. And the next thing that we create, if we don't do something about it and recreate and uncreate what we have created, they're going to do the same thing. So now you got that. You got these gangsters carrying the vision. You got the toddlers carrying the vision that white's good. We got every aspect. Then you get the young men, people going to get jobs. They see they're promoting the white folks over them with less. They carry the vision. Yeah, man, the white man carry. Yes, they will. They hold you back. They hold you back, and they will. And you see them always in the places you want to be. You could be more educated. You could have more emotional intelligence. You could have whatever, but you won't be the manager. They're going to put you in a lesser position. And if they do put one in a position, he's one that generally supports white supremacy, and he doesn't even know it. He's a token. So now we go on and on and on to the African American woman. We go to these people in their 30s and their 40s, same thing. We don't like ourselves too much. This is why we can't wear our own hair. We can't do this, we can't do that, because we're not good enough. I myself have to reprogram my own mind. It's been programmed. And I consider myself a conscientious, independent thinker. I don't think like the masses. I don't want to think like the masses. But I was telling a friend of mine, a couple of days ago, I was saying, wonder what I'm going to wear when I speak on Thursday. And I said to myself, oh, maybe I'll throw on some of my jeans. Maybe I'll throw on my bell bottoms. Maybe I'll throw this on, my this. And then the next day, I was sitting contemplating. Thought came. When you do workshops for white people, you always dress up. And I was like, man, why would I not want to look at that level for my people? The program is here, but I have to pay attention to this program. And every time I put the light on the program is dissolved. And I put another program there. I recalibrate my thinking. Black people collectively have got to change their thinking. When we go into these schools, black people have innate power in them. We have a connection with the Creator that is marvelous. That's all I'm going to say. Everything the Creator created has something internally, a GPS system. All the way down to the fish, the salmon. They know when to swim upstream to spawn. There's nobody telling them. The bear in the forest, nobody's telling him it's time for you to go hibernate. He knows something in him. Nobody's telling the birds it's time for you to fly south. It's in them. But why does the African American need somebody to tell them where to go, how to move, who to pray to, how to eat, how to this, how to that? The highest creator, creation, man, put something in us. But they've been programming us to believe, even if we research, well, the white people don't like African people because the black male is so fertile. That's to keep us from looking here. So we're looking at that. So we're looking not only at our lower chakra, our lower self, we are not looking at our higher self. They tell us who we are, but we cannot even define who we are through our own being because it's dormant. There are men walking around who have a small spirit, and I've seen them. I could see. I've seen men, black men, big men, strong men. They got a small spirit. And then I've seen small men with a big spirit. The spirit of the black person and the black people has been pressed down. If anybody has ever gone fishing, you've seen a cork that they put on the hook, on the line, all you do is let that cork loose. It's under the water and it'll pop up. That's the same thing with the soul. The soul is the most important aspect of us. They done tapped into our soul through spirituality. They've tapped into our physical body, and then they've tapped into our mind. Now we look around and we can see older people, people that are even past 30 and 40, what they believe about themselves, how they view themselves. You can see it all over. They don't feel good about who they are. They don't like their looks. Nobody likes the way they look. Nobody likes the way their body is. No, all the things that the white man has said was no good. We believed it somewhere in our subconscious. So now we got all of these individuals collectively. Think about it. I cannot tell you the number of millions of African American people right here in America who hold the image in their minds as a collective that the white man is supreme. Can you imagine if every African American knew that he could change his mind and uncreate that and begin to see himself as the supreme being and begin to see himself as the one who is wealthy and who is rich and has all the things that he desires? If he could see that, if one could see it, I've seen it. I've created. I've done workshops on manifestation. I know how to manifest. I know how to precipitate. I've used my mind. I've closed my eyes. I put a vision in there of what I wanted, and it came to pass. If I can do it and others can do it, we can do it as a collective. But we have to get out of our comfort zone. Can you imagine millions of black people just one day decide we're going to all close our eyes and we're going to see ourselves whole, healthy, perfect, complete, wealthy, and on top of our game? Just 1 million for one day. White supremacy would just cave in. It would collapse.
That's right. That's right.
This is why they told other races, and they, right now in our communities, any race, and they'll open a store. And the government is so filled with the ability to negate African people in our communities. A store, a Middle Easterner can open a store anywhere, Inglewood, West Side, you name, anywhere. And at night when they leave with their money, the police escort them out. They escort them out. How you think conscious African people feel when they see it in their community? What you think they think? Boy, these, and they'll say it. These white so-and-sos, they just come in here. We say it with emotion, feeling. This is what creates. This is the 70% of our brain power that we don't use. Visualization. Visualization, imagination, and desire. It is asleep and dormant in us because we don't use it. But if we used it, this is why they say we are a sleeping giant. A giant has so much potential, but he's asleep. If we just use our consciousness, there's a new physics called quantum physics. Quantum physics claims and dictates that you create your reality. And whatever you look upon and whatever you see, it changes with the way you see it. This is so powerful. This is information that they've always had, but we haven't. This is why they've had the greater schools historically and the lesser schools. The lesser schools were for poor whites. We weren't included. We didn't get the information from the lesser schools. We were in the dark ages here. So all the information, the knowledge, it was held and kept for the royals, the elite, the elected officials. They had it. That's why they have all these secret organizations. I was just talking to a friend of mine about everywhere I drive, you can see, if you're going west, you're going to see these little places, some kind of fraternal, old men going up in there, old white men. What is the secret? The secret is they are using our mind. And they want to continuously use our mind. And we are not aware. We don't know. Because we know that we get a passion and we get this feeling. Feeling married with a thought is creative. When you marry feeling with a thought, you're creating your reality. We have been thinking what we don't want. And we've been getting it. And we've been creating for white people what they want. And they've been getting it. So now is the time for us to wake up. That's why I wanted conscious people here. People here who understand what's going on and how we can put a stop to this. And we can change the very nature of African American people. Think about it. You go into these schools, they program you. You go to grammar school, they program you and they test you to make sure you have it. Then you go into the higher schools and they program you and they tell you their lives, their history, their heroes until you got it. And if you don't get it, you fail. So they open the gate. If you pass, you can be a success. But if you fail, you're nothing and nobody. And everybody around says it. You're nothing and you're nobody because you failed. They program. You go into these higher universities. The program gets a little more intense. They teach you what to think, but they don't teach you how to think. These powers that be that put these educational curriculums and programs into these different states, they know that we don't know. That's why they have free education, because they program in your mind. And when you go through these higher institutions, you come out, you know what to think about a given discipline generally, but you don't know how to think. They still didn't teach you about the 70% of that mind that you're not using. I wonder why. Because the royals, the elite, and the others have that information. That's how they control us. Our minds are so valuable that they spend billions of dollars, billions, to captivate it through marketing. But we don't think our minds are important. We just let anything come in. We'll look at any station, we'll listen to any music. All this stuff is programming us. We are a combination, every human, of what we eat, what we think, and what we drink. That's who you are. So if you let all this outside information come in, it's programming you. And then we get comfortable. We get in the comfort zone and we're like, oh, we don't want to move. We like it this way. Well, a comfort zone is like a big old anchor on the ship. It'll hold you down. And over time, you'll be like stagnated energy. And we'll never produce. You look at stagnated waters. You can't drink it. It's useless. It's the same with our minds. We have to work with our minds. There's 70%. In order to manifest, you have to have a desire first. Desire is innate. It's a part of that 70%. You desire a thing first, and you'll see a small image in your mind of the thing you desire, whatever it is. And once you desire a thing, that is innate. That is something God-given, your desire. Because everyone is given a different desire. That is what is available to the individual. If you got a desire, it's for you. And the Creator allowed you to have that desire. You're not desiring a 747 plane, because that's not what you want. It's not available to you. But if you desired it, and you desired it long enough, you'll have access. As if you're an owner. It's all in here. It's that 70%. You start to having a desire, you put your mind on a thing, and then you muster up your feelings. Feeling is one of the most important aspects of manifesting. You have to feel like you already got the thing. You got to feel it. And that's what we do when we hold white folks in our mind. We put a feel in there. And sometimes the feeling is a bad feeling, but that feeling is manifesting. It's manifesting the image that's in your mind. It's creative. So we got to watch our feelings. And this is why they keep African Americans attempting to get their basic needs. Food, clothing, and shelter. Everything else is hard, everything else is off limits, and everything else is redlined. Because if you get all your basic needs met, then you can look for higher things. You can tap into your higher self. You can tap into your subconscious. And you will begin to become a mighty producer, a mighty creator. We have been taught that the only way we'll move forward is we got to work real hard. They didn't. Their ancestors didn't work real hard. Our ancestors worked real hard.
That's right.
I mean, if I'm just sitting on my plantation and I'm the white woman and you taking care of my baby, you cooking my food, you out there pulling up the cotton and selling it and other, I'm just sitting there, I ain't got nothing to do but think evil. How I'm gonna hurt you more. And that's what they did. And we were just sitting there on those fields just begging through the Bible, Jesus, come save us. My ancestors, they were from Mississippi. I was born in Chicago, my father's from Mississippi. So I know that culture. I used to go down, he used to love it, he'd go down and drive down there all the time. And as a kid, I grew up, I know the culture. I know the wells, I know about them outhouses and them smoke houses, and I would stay down there in the summer with all my cousins. I saw how they were treated. They wouldn't even look at a white man. They were scared. They had that fear in them. That's why they had the Ku Klux Klan widen under the hoods. Fear. You ever wonder why they wore white? White man. Fear of white. You got a white God. You got white fear. You got white on television. Everything. So now your mind program. We have to deprogram and get rid of the old program and begin to get this message out. Everyone in here has access to people. We got to tell people they got to start visualizing, having a desire for themselves and their people instead of being envious over here, won't help this one over here and divided over there. I was thinking, like right now, everybody's talking about these women being snatched.
Right.
African American women. And I'm sure it's true. But it's not as widespread as it will be, because we're going to make it that way with our thinking.
That's right.
We're going to see them being like that. We're going to see them being snatched. And guess what? Our minds are creative. And then the next generation, the next couple of generations that rise up, they're going to be scared to speak to another black person. There'll be no camaraderie. This is where we're headed. Now, metaphysicians and a lot of spiritual people understand this planet has shifted. In fact, NASA finally came and talked about it a few months back. They said the poles had shifted, but this has been projected and predicted from the many old cultures. So people were waiting on this time, and the shift happened. This planet was moving from a consciousness of a third dimensional reality into a fifth. And it shifted. And if you look at any of these physicists or hear what they have to say, They say the planet has moved into what is considered dark matter. Dark matter equals melanin. This is why right now, African people with melanin in their skin are the highest population. White people cannot live with this melanin. That's why they're dying off. Their populations are dying off. There's an old book I used to read called The Death of the West. And it was by a guy named Bob Woodard. And he talked about the populations, it was in the early 90s. He talked about the populations were disappearing in white all over Europe, all over the planet. And they said that the only one that was proliferating was the African man. Because for every baby that died that was African, it was being replaced. But for every white man that died, there was no baby to replace him. So now we are the majority, but we don't know it. This is why we got to use what we have. We can just sit down and just use our creative power, innate, that God gave us, power. And all religious teachings do say one thing. It's a common thread. They say that it is power in your thought, or power in your words, or power between life and death is in your tongue. But before it rolls off your tongue, it's got to come through here.
That's right.
So whatever a man sees in here, he can create. He can create. You have to have desire. You have to have your visualization. And that has been dormant. We don't use that aspect of our mind. That's a part of the 70%. That's where the will lies. The will. The will of a man lies in that thinking, in that faculty. How do you muster up the will? You don't hear these words spoken in the black community. The will of a man, when you start saying, I have a strong will, it's something you could feel it vivifying in your body. That word will. It gives you fortitude. It gives you determination. The white man says it's all about the survival of the fittest. But the black men are going to church when they get a certain age, after they did everything they want to do, then they say, I'm humble. And the preacher tell you you're a sheep. And you believe you're a sheep because he's your shepherd. That's why they always, with the black church, the white man started this. They had the preacher to be up on a pedestal, sit him up high. Because the people in the audience, they're gonna do like this. They're gonna look up, and when you look up, it's your subconscious comes into play. So now you really captivated. And even if you're sitting at that table and you know it's nothing being fed, you hungry, you so attached emotionally and spiritually you can't free yourself. White supremacy got you. How do you free yourself unless it is here? This is your freedom right here. This is the freedom of our race. Desire, imagination, visualization. Every night before I go to sleep, there are 4 brainwave stages. You got beta, you got alpha, you got theta, and then you got delta. When I'm in that theta state, and I'm good at it now because I do it. I've been doing it so long. It has picked up the momentum. It's like a part of me. Before I go to sleep, in the theta state, I program what I want. I see an image of it. And I expect it. And I do the same thing upon waking. When I'm waking up, I go into theta. When I'm coming out of that sleep, I start. Theta is a brain wave that the yogis have always aspired to. They sit, they meditate for hours and hours and hours to get in that state. But once you program your mind, you begin to work with your mind, you got the most powerful aspect. Mind power is powerful. And this is how they have kept us in a state. They don't want us to think. Because once you start thinking, you can free yourself. And if you free yourself, you will feel what that freedom is like. And you want that freedom for others that you care about. So the collective mind, our subconscious, has been raped. That's it. It's been raped. And we don't think about it. But I had to bring this out. We have to begin to visualize what we want and stop visualizing the European, the white man, and they're going to put the images on TV to reinforce it. Everywhere you see it, stay powerful. But now it's about money. So now they're putting a few black people out there. They want to sell to us. But we have to know we cannot fall prey any longer to somebody else raping our subconscious mind. So all of those here tonight, it is our duty to tell people. You got to find a way. It's a very difficult subject to share with people. So you have to find a way to share this with people. You are what you think all day long. Think your people. See groups of African American people in your mind successful. See them rising up, wiping their eyes, waking up. That will become our reality as a collective. There's this book that I read recently. Well, I guess a few years back. It hasn't been recent. But it talks about how every religion, they did research, and they talked about healing. And they found out that no matter who or what religion you were, and it's really close to, it's over 3,000 religions on this planet. And whatever you believed, and you healed someone, or you manifested something, they said it was because of their religion, each one. But it wasn't because of the religion. It was because of something in that human, that belief. That belief with the visualization, with the emotion, when you marry all that and entwine that, antennas up, thinking, you're aware, you got to be paying attention. You have to be paying attention. This is why they keep our minds so diverted. You got to take your mind and put it where you want it and leave it there and let it be there. But we have allowed our minds to be naked. Running around with naked minds, and anybody put anything in it that they want to. So we have lost, and we are still losing. We must wake up, and we must captivate and use that 70% of our mind to get our will in place. Because if a man's will is weakened, he has lost a lot of his manhood. Because that's what a man is supposed to be. He's supposed to have the will and the determination to do whatever it is he needs to do. And all you got to do is use the term will, and you will feel it in your solar plexus. Power. But they're not utilizing our community. We're using the wrong words. We can't, show it. Everybody pose, show is. You broke, yeah, me too. You got, I don't have enough, like sandpaper, it's like this. And you put emotion with it, that becomes your reality. Even if you have nothing, when you begin to start saying, I am filled with wealth and riches and resources, and you believe it and you visualize yourself and you see yourself, and the higher realms are dark matter, you're going to get your manifestation faster. Because now you tapping into higher realms of consciousness. We done moved from a third dimensional reality and into a fifth. So we have to raise our vibrations to be in the same frequency with the fifth dimension. That means you got to be conscious of what you eat, think, and drink. Everything has to raise your vibration. Everything you put in your body, it's either going to take you closer to health or take you closer to dis-ease. We must be mindful. Every thought is going to raise you higher or it's going to make you feel down. Everything. We have to be mindful. Mind, body, spirit has to be in sync. People are so discombobulated because a lot of African American people don't have information to let them know you're no longer a third dimensional being. The cosmic energy that done affected humans over lifetimes. The sun. I read some research that indicated that even the Neanderthal man, when his brain grew bigger and he was able to stand upright, it was the sun. The sun was the force that did that. So these heavenly bodies, when a comet comes through, they all affect us, but we're not aware. And we have gotten out of sync with natural tendencies and nature. We have to get in sync. We have to do certain things under certain times. If we decide that we want to do something on this day and it's a full moon, you might just fail. If you do something on the new moon, it might be good. But if we don't understand these tendencies, we are in trouble and we're destined to fail. But it is time for us to wake up our subconscious. The subconscious is right there. It's working for white folks. So now it is time for black people to make your subconscious work for you. That was my intention. I hope I was able to articulate this, that everybody clearly understands that we are creator beings and we create. But what are we creating? Or do we ever just really embody the idea that I am a creator? I know I am. I say I am. Whatever I attach I am to, I am. And I know this. I believe that. And it happens. That's how I'm in this house. Because I believed it. But everything outside of me didn't. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a single parent. I'm an abused woman. I had some bad little kids. I am not supposed to be right here where I am. But I use this. I saw it here. I visualized it because I was fortunate. I had got a hold to some books when I was 17, 18 years old. I got some books out of Nyack, New York that dealt with the mind, mind cosmology, mental scientists, all kinds, and I loved reading. And I began to apply. And I gained and got everything I ever wanted through thinking, through my program in my subconscious.
That's right.
I program it by visualization, feeling, and first of all, desire.
That's right.
I desire a thing come to pass. We are supposed to be able to control every cell in our body. But we look outside of ourselves. I talk to every cell in my body. I talk to a group of cells in my body, which might be my liver, my this, my that. I tell it what I want it to do. It don't do what it want to do. You have that ability. You have that innate, it's a part of your GPS system. It's a part of that mental faculty. You visualize, you see, you do the inner talk. Every system in your body is talking to each system. And they working just perfectly fine. They're not bumping up into each other. Your circulatory system's doing what it's supposed to do. Everything's doing what it's supposed to do at the right time. But if you're not paying attention and you let the wrong thoughts get in there or the wrong energy get in there, then you got a problem. How does energy get in there? By what we eat, what we think, and what we drink. That's why I always say I would never eat food from a mad person. Because energy is energy. Everything is energy. And energy is just transformed. We are energy. And the scientific community can measure the health of every organ. And they can measure a diseased organ. They can measure the energy of what our thoughts are. This thing is deep. With this quantum physics and this technology, they know us. We have to rise up and know ourselves, know our potential, know our capabilities. And just know that we are creators. And we must stop creating for others and begin to create for ourselves. I created for me. You created for you. You created. Everyone has created where they are. Black people, African American people have fallen into this idea. Everything good that happens to them, they say it was God. Everything that bad happens, they say, oh, Satan got in the way. Well, where is your responsibility? What are you doing? If something good happens to me, I say, I thank the Creator for giving me that insight. Now I got confidence that I'm good at what I'm doing. It builds me up. And then if something bad happened, well, I got to see what I did wrong.
That's right.
I got to check me out and make sure I don't do that again. I got to change my strategy. But it relies on me to create for me, no one else. But it's time. It's time for us to wake up and to wake everyone else up with the powers of our own innate abilities and our mind. Remember, this is the next step to the freedom for all African American people. If you want to be free, see yourself the way you want to be. I don't care if them old thoughts creep in and they want to show you an image of what you thought you were. You gotta wrestle with it. You gotta put another idea that is stronger, that'll knock that idea out until you begin to reprogram yourself. But every individual has the password for their own mind. No one else can go in and get rid of your program. You have to do it. You have to be uncomfortable with it. You have to have desire. And a lot of times people they give up. They no longer have a desire. They get satisfied. But if you wake up your desire within yourself and you wrap it up with feeling and visualization, you will move into higher places, the places that you've always dreamed of. And you're never too old because you always got your mind with you. You can start right now, tonight, tomorrow, visualizing your dream, and you will see that it will come to pass. And this has to be proven to each individual through his own understanding. Mine was proven to me through my understanding, and yours must be proved to you through your own understanding. And this is the end of the video. But hopefully that the message is out that we need to program our own reality and stop holding up other cultures and other races and making them supreme and making us the least.
That's right.
Thank you.